everyone. My name is Bogdan Puchta. I am with the Polish-American Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of everyone who's worked on effecting this webinar or connection, thank you for joining us today. We also hope that you, your family and friends are staying healthy and staying safe. I'm especially very pleased to see, looking at the attendance list and who I see on the screen, that in addition to the regulars of our online and in-person sessions, we have those who are with us for the first time. Welcome. Before we go on, I'd like to mention a couple of points of order and suggestions. First, the other night, watching the news, I learned of a new phrase, Zoom hijacking. Apparently, it's become a new sport for hackers to hack into Zoom meetings and disrupt them with obscene words or images. So if something strange happens during the session, please don't assume it's me or anyone else who's attending the session. If something happens, I guess I'll just end the meeting and try to reconnect later. Second, I'd like you to know that as a host of this connection, I have just muted everyone to help minimize any background noise, but if really necessary, you should be able to unmute yourself. Regardless, I guess more importantly than during in-person meetings, please try not to talk over others. Next, we'll try to give an opportunity for each of you to ask questions after the presentations. But I especially encourage you to, as Lena already mentioned, encourage you to use the Zoom chat feature to post your questions. Even if we run out of time, this will give us an opportunity to answer the questions by email or by phone soon after. When you post a question, please note that you can indicate if it's to a specific person who's doing the presentation or to all presenters. The very timely subject of this webinar is federal COVID-19 relief programs and your business. As a Chamber of Commerce, we're very fortunate that among our members, we have experts who are ready and willing to share their expertise and help us navigate through the really deluge of information and situations, even while they work from home. And so our Zoom panel today includes an accountant, Margaret Borla of Portage Brown, LLC. Margaret, can you wave perhaps? No, she can't. We can only see her name. We also have with us a finance specialist, Sam Lapinski, from Evergreen Avenue, Inc., and a lawyer, Paulina Gargachmiel of Chuhak and Texan, PC. Did I pronounce it okay, Paulina? The relief based on very recent, very recent legislation. So we will begin with the lawyer, Paulina Gargachmiel.
Yes.
Paulina?
Yes. Am I unmuted now? Yes. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Paulina Gargachmiel. I'm an attorney at the law firm called Chuhak and Texan, as you can see on your screens now. It's a law firm that has about 100 attorneys, and we're located both in Chicago and New York. The biggest part of my firm is the biggest group is the banking group, which I'm a part of. There's a corporate group, which does a lot of just general corporate work, assisting different corporations with loan documentation and any type of business matters. We can hear some background noise. I don't know if you want to mute everyone, Bogdan. I just want to. I'll unmute myself, I guess.
Joanna supposed to unmute herself because we can hear her. Joanna? Hello, Joanna?
Okay, maybe that's maybe now it's done.
Bogdan, if you can try mute her, maybe it's gonna be working also.
Most of the people are on mute.
Yeah, well, right now, yes. Thank you.
All right, so I'm an attorney in a banking group. So every day I work on commercial litigation matters, from breach of contract, replevin, foreclosure, bankruptcy, different collection matters. And the majority of my work is representing the lenders or other financial institutions. And we've been really closely looking at what's going on right now, and we've actually been very busy. We're all working from home, but we're very busy trying to stay afloat and advise our clients where everything stands. So talking about our webinar today, as most of you probably know by now, on March 27, President Trump signed what's called the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It's called CARES Act in everyday colloquial speech. This act actually pumps over $2.2 trillion to the economy to allow individuals and businesses to get through the next couple of weeks. SBA, which is Small Business Administration, received authority and funding, or will receive funding shortly, through the act to modify the existing loan programs and to create new ones that assist small businesses and individuals nationwide that are affected by COVID-19 emergency. And we're going to focus today primarily on the 4 programs that are available by the Small Business Administration. And then both Sam and Margaret will kind of talk about specifics. I'll give an overview, but they will talk about specific application procedures and kind of just answer any questions you might have about where to go and what information to put in your application. Those 4 programs are: one, a new program, which is a Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. That's a hot commodity right now, and there's tons of news about it, and Sam will talk about in detail, and I'll provide an overview in a second. There's an Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which has been around for a while, but it's more now, obviously, in this situation, it's going to be used more. There is another change for the existing SBA loans, where there is a payment relief program by the SBA. And finally, there's an Express Bridge Loan Program that you might qualify for. And then I will start with the Payroll Protection Program. It's eligible borrowers with lenders can work with their lenders, which is an important part, with the lenders, with the banks, to receive up to 2.5 times their average monthly payroll expenses for the year, or up to $10 million, whichever is less. The cool part about this program is there's no collateral requirement, there's no personal guarantees. The interest rate is super low because it's only 1% interest loan, and it has a 2-year term. Also, the payments are deferred for 6 months. So once you get the loan, you don't have to pay anything for 6 months. The key here is what the funds need to be used for. And as the name sounds, Payroll Protection Program. The funds should be used for payroll costs, mortgage interest obligation, rent obligation, utilities, and other interest payments that have accrued at the beginning of the year through February 15. The most important component, and I think that's what Sam will definitely go into detail about this, is the forgiveness part of this. This is a loan initially, but if you spend money on what you're supposed to spend, the government will pay those banks back, and you will not have to pay a dime. So it's really free money if you do everything right. It's free money for your business. So I think this is where we need to kind of focus most of our attention on. The next is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. This is a program where you get a loan that's up to $2 million. It's up to 30 years maturity, so it's a long-term loan. The interest rate is relatively small, only 3.75%. This one is a loan directly through the SBA, so it's not through the bank. And it requires regular underwriting, collateral, guarantees, so all the shebang that you normally have with SBA loans. The cool part about it is you can get an emergency advance of $10,000 at the time of application, so it's quick money that you can get when you apply through this loan. And Margaret, in the second, once I'm done, going to walk you through the application process. You apply on the SBA website, obviously provided it doesn't crash, but the idea is that you can do it on the website. directly through the SBA. The other two programs that I want to just highlight out there, and we can definitely take more questions at the end, is the payment relief program for the current SBA customers. You have to be a current SBA borrower, but if you are and you have to show that you have been impacted by disaster, what's going on right now, the SBA will actually automatically pay 6 months of your principal, interest, and fees on the current loans that you have, or the ones that will be issued shortly. This is not a deferment, so you don't have to pay it. This is it. They'll basically go ahead and spend the government funds to pay your loan for 6 months so your business can stay afloat. Like with other programs, we're still waiting further guidance from the SBA and Treasury on this, and what criteria they will look at and what documents they will review to make those payments. But you would want to talk to your lender, your current lender, to get more details. They're obviously on the calls every day trying to figure out and reading the rules as to what's going on, because this is still developing. I was actually participating in a webinar with the Illinois SBA experts, and that was this weekend, and they still didn't know exactly. So it's still kind of a work in progress, unfortunately. And the last thing, which I want to highlight, is the Express Bridge Loan Program. It allows the SBA lenders to deliver expedited SBA guaranteed financing up to $25,000 without doing much more review at the beginning and due diligence. You can only apply to the lender that you already have. It can be refinanced by your big IDIL loan, and it's only one loan per applicant. But it is, again, an opportunity to get up to $25,000 of quick funds while you're trying to navigate the system and see what to do next. I think the majority of the lenders, and I think Sam will vouch for that because we talked about it yesterday, is they're still trying to focus mostly on PPP and the big loans. But this program is still out there, so I think definitely worth something asking for. Margaret, there's also quite a bit other relief in the COVID Act. It's a very long regulation that came up, and there is other relief for the businesses, individual. You probably know that the tax deadlines have changed, tax obligations. There's also changes to the bankruptcy code, and especially the Small Business Reorganization Act that just recently came into play end of February. So there's other stuff in this act that we will definitely not discuss in this webinar. But if you have specific questions, we're the chamber, myself, we're definitely welcome those through the chat or email, as we can kind of explore those and maybe have a webinar about the other topics in the future. By no means I'm a tax expert, but the bankruptcy changes I can certainly address. So with this, I want to give the floor to Margaret, who's going to discuss the economic injury disaster loan in detail in the application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. Thank you, Bogdan.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna now take over screen sharing so I can show you my presentation. Welcome, everyone. This is Margaret Borla. I'm a CPA with Porty Brown LLC. We're a mid-sized accounting firm in Chicagoland, serving small and medium-sized businesses of pretty much any industry that you can imagine. I'm not gonna elaborate on that. If anyone needs an accountant or needs help, they know where to find me. So today what I'm gonna be showing you is the steps to apply for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan on the SBA website.
Margaret, we do not see your screen.
Okay. Let me try that again.
Yes. Mhm. Good.
Let me go back. So this is me again. So I know you can't see me on Zoom, but this is my picture.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to go over the steps of how you can apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan on the SBA website. You simply go to the SBA website, and they are making it very convenient right now. When you log in, that's the first thing you're going to see on their website, that they have a link to all of the types of the help programs that they have put out as far as the coronavirus and the current pandemic. So you can see where they have a click here, and that's where you're going to click on that website to get into the programs and pick the program that makes the most sense for your business. If you decide to go for the economic injury disaster loan, you're going to pick from these options that you see here on the screen. The PPP is the Paycheck Protection Plan. The loan application, that's the second option here, the one that says $10,000 advance. That's where you're going to click. Just some main points about the loan, that SBA loan that I'm talking about. If you apply for this loan, you're able to also apply to receive a $10,000 advance that is a forgivable part of the loan that doesn't have to be paid back if you get approved. It's available for pretty much any business that has less than 500 employees, although there are some exceptions to the 500 employee limit. I'm not going to go into detail on that because I don't think that applies to much to our audience. But if anyone is interested what those exceptions are, we can elaborate later. And the business, as far as the business type that can apply, that can be a sole proprietor, independent contractor, self-employed persons are also included, not just your corporations and partnerships. It's also available for some non-for-profit organizations. You can apply for that too. And per the information that is available on the SBA website, the turnaround on this loan and the advance is just a few days. I can't confirm that yet. I haven't seen any of my clients who have applied so far receive it yet. We're still waiting to find out. It's just also fresh. It's just happening literally as we work every day. And the key points to the applications are that you have to respond to every question. You have to fill out every question that applies to your situation, to your business. And at the end, you're going to self-certify that the information you're providing is truthful. And the SBA website says that the estimated completion time for this application is about 2 hours. I think the range is probably between half hour to maybe more than 2.5 hours, depending on whether you have the information that you're going to be providing ready, or you have to look it up or find where you have it, and also depending on the type of business you are. So with that, let me get into the actual application. So when you go to the SBA website, you click on the link, you get into the application for the actual disaster loan. You're going to see this screen, which clearly shows the steps you're going to go through in the application. And the first step is disclosures. And you click that link, that takes you to this screen where you're going to actually fill out what type of business you are. You have to find the description here that most applies, the best applies to your business. And then you're going to answer these questions about, whether basically you're eligible for an SBA loan. You're certifying that none of these bad things, I want to call it, apply to you. Disqualifying things. And then you get into the actual application where you're going to provide the information about your business. Some of it is very straightforward. Your business name, federal tax ID, what type of organization that actually is a drop down where you pick whether you're a corporation, partnership, etc. Non-for-profits are going to mark the appropriate box for that they are non-for-profit. You'll see as you go through those questions where you see the little red mark on the left side of each question. As you answer them, they're going to turn green, and so that's how you know you've answered them and then you're going to be able to go forward. Here's the following questions we're still on the same steps where you have to provide some financial information. It's not very complicated. Basically, they're asking for a business to provide 12 months of gross revenues for the last 12 months. It's just worth noting that it's not the last, that it's not the entire 12 months of 2019 that they're asking for. As of when I actually looked at this, they were asking for 12 months going back from January 31, 2020. So you would cover, so that would cover the period from February 1st, 2019 through January 31, 2020. And then they want you to provide cost of goods sold for your business for the same period, if that applies, obviously. If you're a rental business, you would provide the rents that you have lost, you're not able to collect or charge during the period. And then non-for-profits have their own type of question. They have to provide actually the cost of their operations for the last 12 months. There's also a little box here, if you look, that some faith-based or entities, organizations are also able to apply, and they have a different set of questions related to them. And then the following bottom part of that same, we're still in the same step, we are providing information about, our business address, phone number, email address, when the business was first started, and whether it's been under the same ownership since the beginning. And then the last question here on this page, business activity, it's a drop down. So you can't just type in to describe your business. You're gonna pick from a drop down. The best case scenario is if you find something that really fits nicely to what you do, you can pick that. If you can't find anything that fits, you're gonna pick other business services. And the last two things on that step are, you have to, again, picking from a drop down, it's a more detailed explanation of what your business does, and you're gonna have to provide the number of employees you have as of January 31, 2020. And if you've answered all your questions, it will all turn green and you can go to the next step. The next step is where you're gonna provide the information about the owners of the business. And basically, if it's a partnership, let's say you have two partners, you're gonna provide their names, social security numbers, date of birth, etc. If it's one owner, sole proprietor, it's gonna be just that one owner. So it just depending on your particular situation, you might have to fill out more information or less. And then the owners also have to provide their actual home address and answer whether they're a US citizen or not. As you can see here, if you have more owners, there's a box where you click to create another record for another owner of the business. Once you answer that, you go to step 4, where you're gonna answer now questions you personally as whether you as the owner of the business, have you had any of this type of these types of problems in your past? I assume that would be a disqualifier for SBA. And then the last part of the application is if someone is helping you to fill out this application, you will have to provide this information here, and then you might give that person permission to speak to SBA on your behalf. And very important on this slide, in step 4, if you would like to ask for an advance, you have to mark this box here and provide your bank account information. So then if you get approved, SBA, I presume, will transfer the funds directly into your bank account, and you don't have to wait for a check in the mail. And then you don't have to be afraid to click through, because so here's where you're going to certify that all the information you have provided is correct, but you can go to the next slide, because the next step is where you can again review all of the information you have provided. It's not that you click and you've submitted. You will have a summary page where it's going to show all the questions and all of your answers, which I can't show you right now because I would have to show you an actual application. But it will give you an opportunity. If you've missed something, you want to correct something, you can go back from the summary page, edit your response, and come back here. And then the last step is when you submit the application, and you get a confirmation instantly on your screen showing that you have applied and that they're going to send, they send right away a confirmation to your email address that was provided in the application that confirms that your application has been submitted. So those are the steps. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward and convenient. It just, you know, you might, if you want to save yourself some stressful times, you might maybe try to prepare this information ahead of time, knowing what you're going to be expected to provide. So with that, I think I can give the floor back to our next presenter. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Margaret. Is it back to you, or is it Sam now?
I think it's Sam is going to now talk
All right.
about.
Sam?
Hi, hello everyone.
Hi.
Am I coming, Chris? Okay. Everybody hear me? Great.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name is Sam Lipinski. I'm with Evergreen Avenue. We specialize in providing and helping people or businesses actually to secure business capital. We do commercial real estate loans. So we are existing on the front lines of helping businesses actually getting the money. So thank you, ladies, for explanation as to how does it look in the paper and everything else. I'm going to try to explain as to what's going on right now with banks. What does it mean to the actual businesses, how the money is being distributed right now, if at all, and where to go to apply, how is the application process going to look, and what to expect. So let me start with one thing, Paulina, to your point, that there is actually an update, because if you are a business and you already have an SBA loan, that being either for working capital or any kind of commercial real estate loan with SBA guarantee, that loan automatically is being paid by the government for 6 months. So you don't have to do anything. That's an automatic kind of deferment of the payments. It doesn't affect your credit at all. And the bank just, if you have an auto draft from your account, the bank will stop doing this for the first 6 months. There are certain conditions, one of which is that you have to be current. You cannot be in default of that loan in order to to be granted. So that's just quick updates because we have a lot of clients with these loans. They're actually very grateful that this happened. And this is a good and big relief for them. So that's one. Two, let's start talking about all of these loans that are actually available right now. Because as Margaret said, when they started processing this for the clients, I think we did that too starting Monday. I'm talking about the EIDL, the disaster loan application. No one received the money yet. So the website talks about the $10,000 up to $10,000 advance on these applications being deposited to people's account in 3 days. Since Monday, when we started these applications for clients, no one received the money yet. So it is customary to expect delays. Of course, this is just something that we never been through, and this is a learning curve for everybody. So I guess we'll just have to be patient. There is no actual update on, okay, it's not going to be 3 days now, it's going to be 6 days. It's just everybody's opinions. The banks don't know. These money are going directly from the government, directly from SBA, so no one knows. And there is no updates for clients to see where the money or where the process is. So that's on the $10,000 up to $10,000 advance. Now, the important part to notice is that this advance, it's part of the actual larger application that Paulina was talking about, that up to $2 million, right, and all that. So the larger application technically is in the process. And normally these disaster loan applications are being reviewed up to 21 days. They want to be quick, right? But of course, this is not going to happen in 21 days. The expectation is that it might be a month, 2, or even 3. Just to give you a quick example, when Hurricane Katrina hit the coast there, that was very local, right, disaster. And it took people 4 to 5 months to get the money. This is a nationwide crisis. So the expectations that this is going to be done quickly is just not supposed to be there. Okay, expect delays. Of course, they're trying to scramble, but This is all the money that is going from the government. So they're trying to probably process it as quickly as possible, but we don't know what the actual time will be. So again, so this is the disaster loan application with that grant up to $10,000, right? So this is the first line of defense, and most people can apply for this directly on SBA. Now, as far as the PPP, this is the Paycheck Protection Program. This is the bigger program that everybody's talking about. Okay, came live last Friday, and banks were starting to accepting the applications. I'm going to tell you from a practical standpoint as to what actually happened and how people were, what was the experience from the actual business owners when they tried to do this. And try is the right word, because some of the banks, they're advertising that, yes, we'll start this on Friday. Then starting Friday, they actually stopped accepting the applications. Some of the banks, they did take the applications, but they were saying that we just are going to take them, but we're unable to submit because we're still waiting for SBA and government to, and banks to kind of rehash some details. So there was a lot of commotion, and every bank had different take on it and different ability to take these applications or not take them. Some of the banks that we work with, they're actually, advising everybody to wait because there is no clear indication as to what the process should look like, what kind of documentation they would be requiring. So even though the live date was on Friday and some of the banks were able to take these applications, the important part to make, point to make is this, that these applications are based on a payroll cost that the business has. Therefore, for example, a lot of our clients, they don't have any W-2 employees, but they only have 1099 employees. And that's where is the disconnect, because all the applications that are being processed right now are mainly for the businesses that they do run payroll and have only W-2 employees, because it's very clear shot and it's very clear to the banks what to do with these types of applications. So when you are running a company and you have a payroll and your employees are only W-2s, yes, there are banks that will take your applications, they will process it, and we expect the funding to be pretty swift. Although we are seeing some delays from the banks because the system already choked up. So all these applications that the banks are talking about that they're taking, they're submitting them all at once to the same system of SBA. And that computer system that actually already had the bottleneck where we are getting some feedbacks from the banks that are actually unable to get the decisions. And some, they do have decisions, but they're not, there are declines. So unfortunately, this is the true indication as to what's going on. And in my opinion, yes, it's frustrating, but I guess this is so large that this is so new that it's to be expected for any hiccups, delays, and things to be worked out during the progress and during the process of all of these being processed. So in reality, again, if you have a business with W-2 payroll, you can apply now to banks that actually take these applications. If you run the company with 1099 employees only, unfortunately, you're out of luck because these employees are not being considered as a cost of payroll. Therefore, you as an employer cannot include them into the cost of payroll, therefore applying for that PPP loan, because these individuals, these employees that you pay on 1099 basis are themselves being treated as a separate entity, and they can apply by themselves as individual entity starting this Friday, this coming Friday. So this is the second wave of who can apply. So technically, we expect delays on that too. I wouldn't be surprised if that date will be moved as well. But that's pretty much what is happening right now. And last thing, I do have some feedbacks from banks, and that's why I didn't prepare a presentation, because things are changing so fast that sometimes every day there are different information, different feedbacks we're getting from banks, and sometimes it's hours. So last night I received some emails with confirming some of the applications. Just today, before the meeting, before this webinar, I received already some clarification. This is not correct, this is different, this is this. So Paulina, to your point, that 25,000 bridge loan that you can get from banks. I asked Celtic Bank, which is one of the largest SBA lenders, and he goes like, I'm not aware of it. I said, like, this is on SBA website being told that, people can apply for 25,000 bridge loan, you know, for a time being while you're waiting for different applications. You're like, I'm not aware of it. Let me just dig into it. Let me see, because I don't know anything about it. So there is actually a lot of things that banks are not aware, or they are aware, but maybe certain departments are just not sharing this information because they're not processing this. So I do have a lot of questions from clients that actually do run companies based on 1099 onlys. Can we apply for this bridge loan, right? The answer is yes and no, because it's very tricky, meaning that all of these loans, the EIDL, right, the disaster loan, the 10 grand, $10,000 grant, and the PPP loans, these are all kind of emergency loans. The bridge loan, technically, it's the bridge, it's a temporary loan while you wait for the larger loan to be approved. So it's a temporary thing that you would have to qualify on, and we don't know what kind of qualifications you would have to meet, if they're available, and if so, for whom, and how these going to be processed. So it's a relatively new question, I would say, that we're getting from our clients, and we're trying to go through banks to see how they're going to, you know, accommodate people with these loans. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I would say be patient. If you want to apply for either of these loans, first step would have to be go to your bank where you have your business account. They're the best source because they know you already. If you have a relationship, if you have at least a business account, they should get you in. There was actually a commotion with Bank of America because they're starting to send people away, saying that your relationship with us is not big enough. In other words, yes, you do have a business account, but you don't have credit cards or you don't have loans with us. Therefore, we don't want to take you on, right? Wells Fargo, for example, they said, okay, since we're forking up the money, that we already ran out of all the money. So it seems like they're not taking any applications. So all of these you will learn as you go. And, you know, again, go to your bank first. And if there will be issues or problems, they will address you. And that's your first line of defense. And just on the note of people kind of panicking, it's like, oh my God, there's not going to be enough money from me and all that because everybody's already going through this. Just keep in mind, there's $350 billion available, right? In our opinion, the average loan amount should be between even 25 to 50,000, sometimes 100,000. 7 million businesses would have to apply at one time this week in order for the money to run out. So yes, there is a speed. It's first come, first serve basis, right? So I wouldn't say wait, but don't panic. There is enough money to go around. And the government's already talking about, I mean, the government level, they're already talking about second wave and saying that if the money will run out, not only will put more money into it, but also through the process, I think they will learn some of the details as to what didn't work, what kind of group of people or a group of businesses were left out. If so, how these things are, going to be fixed. And last but not least, just a little thing. I don't know if we have anybody that it's actually a real estate investor. If you own a lot of properties and you have real estate portfolios, okay, maybe the PPP loan is not the best for you, but there are provisions in the Act that might help you to do something on a little bit next level. Okay, so the CPA, your CPA would be someone to reach out to see if there is something that we can do, because there's a lot more things other than just a PPP loan in there. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sam. If Paulina, is there anything to add, or should we go to the question we have on chat? You're muted, Paulina. Would you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So I think Sam mentioned it, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of applying, you only want to apply to one. You only can have one application. You cannot have pending application.
That's correct.
In different. I don't think we mentioned that, and I think that's a key point in the idea of talking to your own bank. As I said at the beginning, I represent quite a few lenders, and while they're super confused and waiting for future guidance, and the new guidance comes out every day, every hour. The idea is here that you should go to your lender, someone you're banking with right now, and those are the banks that will take you first. Obviously, we hope that that you can go to your community bank, and that's fine. But yeah, only one application can be pending for those. So you kind of want to choose where you want to go if you have more than one relationship for sure.
Yeah, and if I can add, actually, so the application for the PPP, it's pretty simple. But if you go to the bank, they will actually help you to fill out this, right? I'm just going to show you. This is a 2-pager. So it's one page where you, on the top, you fill out just your personal information, the business information, and the rest are, these are pretty much a certification questions, and then the second page as well. To answer yes or no. I was charged criminally, or I was arrested, or no, okay? Or I don't have business such as, you know, lobbying or whatever. Very simple questions. So the application itself is very simple. Nevertheless, if you go to the bank to apply, they'll let you know as to what's needed, and they will help you fill this out. That's one. Two, as far as what documentation is needed, if you are running a business with W-2 employees, what you would need is your 2019 payroll documentation, which can be in the form of the actual W-2 for each person for 2019, or you can give them a so-called Form 940. I think Margaret can take this point, but these are the main documentation that they would need in addition to your standard, you know, driver license, your EIN number, and information about the business, and they will also need a voided copy of the voided check from a business account. So they tried to make this process very simple as possible for these applications to be put together very quickly without much thinking about it, because there is no much qualifications they will be basing your application decision on. In other words, they will not check your credit. It doesn't matter if you have bankruptcy 3 years, 5 years ago, okay? These are all the things that now are not being taken into consideration. What is being taken into consideration is how do you run your company as far as how do you pay your employees and how much do you pay them? Because this is the basis for them approving or declining the loan.
And can I answer? I think, you know, talking about forgiveness, I mean, we're kind of talking about something that would happen later, but I think the big part about the PPP is the forgiveness of the loan. So
I
it's
totally
really,
forgot about it, yes.
yeah, I think you didn't mention that, and you know, and I think that's what everyone kind of wants to know. It's free money. If you do everything you're right and you approve, that's why everyone's somewhat rushing to the banks to get it in, because if you actually have the W-2 employees and, you know, you're running business, the idea here is to keep your staff employed. And if you do that and you do it right, and there's a ratio and there's a little bit of calculation what you have to spend the money on, with the idea that the majority, at least 75% is spent on your payroll going forward, you'll be forgiven the loan. So it will become a grant. And we're talking a substantial grant for most of the businesses. So
yeah, and to add to it, this is going to be a process where once you receive the money, which is now we're concentrating on trying to get that right to people's hands. But this is an extremely good point, because yes, this money might become a non-taxable grant. Might is a key word. Why? Because over a period of 8 weeks, you would have to watch how do you spend the money. And the lender that will give you the money and will actually process your application should give you a list as to what type of expenses will be as a qualified expenses that you have to watch how do you spend this money over a period of 8 weeks, one of which the rule is that 75% of that money would have to be spent on payroll, right? So if you keep all this intact for a period of 8 weeks, then it's not an automatic that it will transfer into grant. You would have to apply for it. But the application, we don't know actually what the application form will be, but you would apply to the same bank that will process your application now. And then as long as you have documentation, and we'll learn later as to what that's going to be, right, that loan should turn into grant. So we'll be probably posting more of these webinars to kind of give you advice as to, okay, once you receive the money, this is to watch for, okay? This is what you have to do, or at least don't do this, because that might result in portion of the loan not being forgiven. So I guess we'll have some additional information on that. And this is also the process for banks that it's new, for everybody else that it's new. So just have to be patient.
All right, thank you. Let me perhaps read some questions that we have received in chat. The one here, and it's possible that some of these things have been covered already, but I just wanted to make sure that we've paid attention to the questions. And so the first one to everyone, is it the same application, I suppose, for corporations and self-employed with regard to all of the programs?
yes, right? That's the same application as far
Yes,
as you know.
so
The
on the
timing
first-
of the app. Go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I just want to say that, yes, it is the same application, but on the first page, when Margaret was showing the first slide, these first boxes, I guess, or check marks would have to be determining, would be determining as to what you are. So the first box is that you are a corporation with less than 500 employees. So if you are incorporated, that's the box that you want to check, right? The second actually is I am a sole proprietor or an individual or self-employed person or 1099. That's the second box that you check. So yes, it is the same application. You just have to check appropriate boxes.
And just on related topic, we've noted that all of the applications, I assume, include the question, are you a US citizen or not? Do you think, depending on whether you answer your question yes or no, it's going to have an impact on how it's processed and when it's processed, whether it's processed at all?
Well, yes and no. So hold on. So the first application, when you apply for the disaster loan and the $10,000 grant, right? There is a question, are you a US citizen? And the answers allowed are yes or no. If you check yes, that's a no-brainer, right? If you check no, there is no follow-up questions, okay? Right. Therefore, you don't have to show your green card or anything like that. But keep in mind that this application is this process of you entering the application on a website is the actual entrance into the pool for processing of this application. Therefore, if you put this application through, and let's just assume you will get $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 that advance, that does not end the process. The process continue for you to be considered for the actual disaster loan consideration. At which point the SBA might come back to you, and most likely will, to ask you for additional documentation, at which point also might have question as to, okay, since you're not US citizen, show me that you are a green card holder. Why? Because the application for PPP actually does specify that if you answer no to certain questions, you will not qualify for the loan, right? And I think there is a question I'm trying to see just to confirm, but I think there is a question about that too. You know what, let's go to the next question. I'll get back to it once I'm going to read through it. I don't want to hold
All
up.
right, the next question is, again, to everyone. Can you give an example of cost of goods sold for independent contractors versus a corporation?
I think I'll take that as being an accountant.
Yes.
There's no difference in cost of goods sold for based on what type of entity you are. It's the same for everyone. Cost of goods sold means what is your cost of the product or the service that you're selling. For example, if someone is selling, let's say, flowers, how much are you buying those flowers for? That's your cost. And then you're obviously selling them at a markup, at a higher price. So what for a lot of industries, they will not even have a cost of goods sold. If it's a pure service industry, for example, us accountants, we don't have cost of goods sold. We're not selling anything. We're providing services. Our cost is the cost of our employees, but it's not called cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold comes into play for sellers, distributors, companies that deal with tangible personal property. That's what we call goods that people sell, tangible personal property. So whether you are a one-man shop or a big corporation, cost of goods sold, the definition is going to be the same.
I see. Okay, next question. So the gross revenue for IDLE is from February 1st, 2019 to January 31st, 2020.
That's based on the most recent, what's printed on the application on the website. Those are the dates. So they're saying 12 months going back, starting point is January 31. So obviously you have to include the month of January 2020, and then 11 months of 2019.
I see. And here is an interesting one. So if someone incorporated in the middle of 2019, how many applications do we need to submit for IDLE and PPP? Half year 2019 sole proprietor and half year 2019 S corporation.
Well, so I can take part of that question. So first of all, technically you can apply if you were self-employed or you were in business in general before February 15th of 2020. So on that note, you do qualify. Now, if you run a business that is the same business, this is new, so I'm giving you my opinion, and then the Paulina and Margaret can chime in on that. But if you are running the same business and you are a sole proprietor until a certain time, and then you incorporated, and all of this happened before 2020 February 15th, then it's one in the same entity. So you just apply on whatever is last. So if you have a EIN as a corporation, I would say apply for one as one entity, because if you apply for two separate, these two might cancel each other. As Paulina mentioned, you can apply only for one. But if you run, let's say, if you are an owner of two separate businesses, right? Technically, you can apply for you can file two separate applications. But if you run a business as sole proprietor and now you're running the same business as a corporation, that's one. If you run as sole proprietor and now we're running a separate business as a corporation, that might be two. But that's something that's kind of up to determining. So I think it's safe to proceed for you to file a corporate application based on the EIN number that you received in 2019.
I would agree with Sam. I think whatever was last, in this situation, yeah.
All right, thank you. It appears there's a question here. Well, perhaps it's been covered already, but let's ask it again. When will we receive confirmation that the loan has been approved? When funds are going to be distributed?
So I can take it, as I said before, no one received the money yet. And when we started putting these disaster zone application, the EIDLs, right, the process was different, where you had to log in, create your login information and whatnot, at which point you had access to the actual status of your application, and you can still do that. But then the process has been changed, where you don't need to create a login information, so you don't have a portal to check your status. So quite frankly, it looks like you just put the application in the big black hole and then you wait. Unfortunately, there is no other explanation, because there is no update. There is no way of you going and seeing as to where your application is. So right now the process is just, submit this, get the application number, and make sure that your email is correct, because we don't know yet, but in my opinion, if you provided a bank account already on this application and you're required to complete this, then one or two things might happen. You might just get the money, let's say $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 of that advance into your account, and that will be an indication that you are approved. Or you might receive an email to expect a certain amount of money, because that will be your approval, but no one knows yet.
Well, thank you. Let's see, we have some requests for people to address, a couple of them, all of us, and maybe we'll go to that, but let's see. Oh, there is a question here. Does anyone have any experience with PNC?
Well, I think prior to it, there's a note that Chase is not accepting applications. It doesn't surprise me that there are some big financial institutions, because we're still waiting for further guidance and for the banks to prepare their own documentation. So, it is changing every day. And unfortunately, we can't really say much more than that. Yes, you go to your initial to your lender, because that's your best chance to get the actual loan through and fund it. But again, I'm not surprised that there's issues with different financial institutions. And maybe Sam knows more about which specific banks do a better job. I have a couple in mind myself too, but I know they give preference to their current customers.
Yes, and that's what I experienced. I don't have personally experience with PNC, but I know that some of my clients, which I advise as such, that go to your bank, they went to PNC, and I think there is a disconnect, because if your client, they're small, that you don't have the relationship, I think you might be in line of other businesses kind of thing. But if you are larger, and this client was actually a larger client of ours, has a large, quite extensive relationship with bank, they might have an assigned banker So they might be in different category for the banks to take care of. And unfortunately, this is kind of not fair. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So like I said, we're learning as we go. So I don't have a direct say that, yeah, PNC is taking the application or is not, because I have experience that actually they're being handled by PNC, but I don't have any results to speak of.
And I think just one more point, and we said that in the presentation, but I think it's important to note that PPP is done through the lender, and IDL, is run through the SBA directly. So I think that's kind of a distinction that we need to all remember. So when we're talking about the banks, it's the PPP, it's the express loan, presumably. But yes, the loan that's not related to your payroll is through the SBA, and you apply directly.
Mhm. Okay, very good. So we're beginning to run out of time. With that in mind, a couple of individuals have asked to make comments. First, maybe Isabella. Isabella is still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, then say what you would like to say.
Sure.
Yes,
Hi,
Isabella.
everyone. My name is Isabella Sadowska, and I work for a small community bank named Inland. We're based out of Oak Brook. We have about 10 locations in the Chicagoland area, but we are not a 7A preferred lender. And we have partnered up with a bank that is. So if you are one of those customers, or you know someone that banks with a bank that is not a preferred lender, they are still highly encouraged to go through that bank, because we were told by the government that we pretty much had to partner up with someone or come up with our own program. And since it is impossible to come up with our own program that quickly, we partner up with an online bank called Radius Bank. And just
They're really
to put
big.
it, yes, and just to put it into perspective for everyone, as of Friday, about, I think, 11 o'clock, so about 2 hours after the program opened, this online bank based out of Massachusetts received 3,000 applications. And this is just a small community bank.
Wow.
We receive a frequent updates from the president there that's handling our applications for Inland Bank. And he clearly told us that the first in line are their own customers and their own portfolio customers. So that is correct what you have, ladies and Sam said. If you can go to your bank first and deal with and it's a preferred lender, go there first, because you will be first one in line. With that said, it doesn't mean that you cannot go to another bank that you don't have a checking account with, but you will be waiting in line for a long, long time. This particular person also told us that they're processing about 200 to 250 applications a day. And again, they're smaller, maybe bigger banks are able to process a lot more. But that just lets you know that he told us that he will take our applications from Inland Bank, package them all together, and send them in about a week. And from there, the customers will have to wait for a response. So that's, in practicality, that's how it works. I also had a customer that I helped process this PPP application through Harris Bank, which I used to work for. And it was quite easy on their website. However, the information the client received is, we have your application, it has been submitted. Please allow 10 days for someone to contact you. So they're gonna have to wait at least 10 days by the time someone contacts them before they can even process the application. So it will be a timely process for everyone. So people just have to be patient, because like Sam said, you will not know when you're approved for a long time by the time you will receive money.
So good information. Okay, thank you, Isabella.
Thank you, Isa.
Also, Chris Samulak, I think, wanted to make a comment. Yes.
Hi, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Hello? Yes, so I want to comment on a few things. One is that I do have an account in Chase, but I was working on my wife's account, and Chase does accept applications. However, it's pretty clear that applications between banks are quite different, because application in Chase is not the same, the one Sam showed earlier. the 2-page simple application is totally different. It's got quite a few questions. And I think one of the reasons you see different questions is that because bank is responsible for this loan, they try to get as much information as possible for the client so they can do that electronically. You are required to provide supporting documentation, which is like W-2s, W-3s, I guess, and 941s and all this stuff. So have this ready, and then you have to submit this with the application. Chase does not accept personal visits to the bank. You've got to do that online. But I know that Wintrust, let's say, it's a small branch in Edgebrook, I believe. They actually work with you when you get in. You still have to, they help you, but you still have to do that online. A friend of mine, I worked with him a little bit on that application. He finished the application, which was different than Chase's application. He already got the number approved, meaning that his loan was approved. However, he had to provide all the information, all the documentation, and then he expects to get the money by the end of this week. So the process is already working, but remember, for Chase to process several thousand customers, or let's say 100,000 customers in a couple of banks in Chicago, is quite different than Wintrust processing, let's say, 700 customers, right? They can do that by hand in a sense. So there is a big plus if you've got an account in smaller banks because you can work directly. But on the other hand, the big banks, they took the time because their application requires much more information, but I believe that it's almost impossible to process this data by hand. That's why they require all this information so they can do that electronically as much as possible, because the whole idea is to provide the money quickly. So once this is done, you should get the money within a couple of days. I don't think it's going to be 21 days. This is for PPP. So that's very important that you go through your bank and don't be surprised if you see different type of application. It seems to be normal.
Yeah, and if I can add to it, and I agree with you, Chris. One thing I want to kind of clarify, that when I was talking about that you don't have updates and everything else, I was specifically talking about the disaster loan application, the EDIL. That's where you submit this directly on SBA website, and that $10,000 advance is a part of the same application. So that's where we don't have any updates, because we have no way of saying now if you're applying for a PPP with a bank, once the bank will take your application, that's your source for potential updates. And you're right, they want to do it quick, but to Isa's point, depending on who's processing it and whatnot. And one more thing on that Chase thing, yes, this is one of the things that they're still discussing between banks and governments as to, okay, we're the bank, we're going to be making decisions, therefore we're going to put additional information in the application. And the government's trying to say, no, you're the administrator of our money, so you just take the application and we'll fund it. But then there's, I don't want to go into details, but there's this disconnect and discussion on the internal side. But the result is that, yes, some of the banks might have their own questions or questionnaires in addition to the standard application. So it's a learning process for everybody, I guess. So
another thing I've learned is that you can actually, the simple question on that on all applications, I guess, is that the payroll, your average monthly payroll for 2019, and then it's multiplied by 2.5, and that's the maximum loan you can get, the PPP advancement. And you mentioned the sum that up to 75%, I mean, the minimum 75% has got to be the payroll. However, remember that this number is just the estimate. So if you've got a chance or a plan to add another employee, even like a family member who you wanted to employ and so on, you can still add that person and request more money for payroll. On some applications, there's actually a field for number of employees and then number of employees you plan to add in the next 2 months. And that's really important. If you want to add employees, you can request the money for that too, even if they are not employed yet.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And thank you all panelists. We have exceeded.
I have a question, Bogdan.
I'm sorry, what?
I have a question still.
Okay.
Do we have a time?
Last question then, belongs to Stanley.
Well, I have a question. How we deal with the LLCs if you have a properties and every property is under separate LLC? How you apply? Let's say
really quick, each LLC, it is each entity. Therefore, you can apply for each entity separately. It will be one application for each. But that goes for the SBA EIDL. You can do that for each entity. As far as a PPP, I think the same thing. I just don't know how PPP will work for the LLCs, holding companies, because technically there's no payroll. So there's this disconnect that we don't know yet how these going to be handled. But on SBA website, you can apply for each LLC individually, even though you're the owner of all of them, for example.
Okay, and separately for if I own company, corporation, I apply for the corporation separately.
So I have clients with 8, 10 companies, and we have processed 10 different applications. We have put in 10 different separate applications for each corporation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm muting again just to be able to say that that we're very grateful to the panelists for sharing their time with us today. And we thank everyone who participated, asked questions. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to send them by email or even call us. You see the contact information on the screen right now. We'll be happy to answer those by email or by phone. And also, today's session has been recorded. So it'll be preserved, and I will try to make sure that it is shared via our promotional channels sometime soon. I also hope that you will be joining us for an online event again. The next opportunity is as early as this Thursday, April 9th. We will host a lunchtime session on planning for succession for small business owners. And then on April 20th, we're in a coalition with several northwest side of Chicago chambers of commerce to organize an online presentation and networking session. It should be very interesting. It'll be hosted by the Incubator 2112, and of course, more information will be emailed to you very, very soon. Then in early May, first week in May, we'll have a breakfast session, and then second week in May, we'll return to our monthly lunchtime session. So thank you again. Stay safe and try to prosper. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.